The research vessel Axiom of Ages moved through the empty darkness of space like a ghost searching for answers. High Archivist stood at the observation window, his crystalline body catching the faint light of distant stars. He had lived for 12,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had cataloged the history of 17 different species, but nothing had prepared him for what his ship had found. The signal had come from a region of space that the Conquered had marked as forbidden. No one remembered why it was forbidden. The record simply said to stay away, but was an archivist. His entire existence was dedicated to finding answers. So when the strange signal reached his ship, he had ordered his crew to investigate. Now he wished he had listened to the old warnings. The structure floating before them was massive beyond belief. It stretched across space like a sleeping giant, dark and silent and impossibly old. Instruments told him that this thing had been built millions of years before the first had crawled out of the oceans of there. Millions of years before any known species had existed. "High Archivist," said his second-in-command, a being of flowing water contained in a humanoid shell. "The translation matrix has finished analyzing the inscriptions on the outer hull." Turned away from the window, "Show me." The symbols appeared on the central display. They were strange and angular, unlike any language in the Concord's database. But as the translation matrix worked its magic, words began to form. Words that made ancient heart feel something it had not felt in centuries. Fear. The translation read, Earth Vessel Prometheus VII, Sol Federation, established year 2.4 billion. Welcome home, children. The bridge fell silent. Every member of the crew stared at the words, trying to understand what they meant. His crystalline fingers trembled as he reached toward the display. "Earth," he whispered, "Sol Federation." "High Archivist," his second-in-command said slowly. "Those words match fragments we have found on 100 dead worlds. The ruins we always attributed to the progenitors. The mythical first race that supposedly seeded life across the galaxy." Nodded. Every species in the Conquered had legends about the progenitors, ancient beings who had existed when the universe was young, beings who had created life and then vanished without a trace. Most scientists believed the progenitors were just myths, stories that primitive species told themselves to explain their existence. But here was proof, solid, undeniable proof. The Sol system said, "I know that name. It is a restricted zone in Sector 7. A young species lives there. They call themselves humans." Humans? His second-in-command pulled up the relevant files. They achieved faster-than-light travel only 300 years ago. They are one of the youngest species in the known galaxy. There are barely a century. They are considered unremarkable. Stared at the ancient structure floating in the darkness. A structure that was billions of years old. A structure that bore the name of the human. "Contact the Conquered Council," he ordered. "Tell them we need to speak with them immediately. Tell them it is about the progenitors." "The Council will think we have lost our minds." "Perhaps we have, but I need to see Earth for myself. I need to understand how a species that is supposedly 300 years old could have built something that is 2 billion years old." The communication was sent. Within hours, received permission to proceed to the Sol system. The Council was skeptical, but its reputation gave his words weight. He had never been wrong before. He had never wasted the Council's time with foolish theories. As the Axiom of Ages changed course toward the yellow star called Sol, returned to his private chambers, he pulled up every file the Conquered had on humanity. He read about their short lives and their strange customs. He read about their art and their music and their wars. He read about how they laughed and cried and dreamed. That last detail caught his attention. Humans dreamed. Every night when they slept, their minds created visions, images and sounds and feelings that were not real but felt real. The Conquered species had evolved past dreaming long ago. It was considered a primitive function of underdeveloped brains. But as read more about human dreams, he felt a strange chill pass through his crystalline form. Humans dreamed of things they had never seen. They dreamed of stars being born. They dreamed of vast empires spanning galaxies. They dreamed of loneliness so deep that it lasted for ages. They dreamed of being gods. "What are you?" whispered to the image of a human on his display. It was a female with dark hair and bright eyes. She looked so ordinary, so fragile, so young. But the structure floating in forbidden space was not young. It was older than could truly comprehend, and it had been built by the Sol Federation, by Earth, by humans. The journey to Sol took 3 weeks. During that time, barely slept. He studied everything he could find about the restricted zone. He learned that the Conquered had avoided Sol for centuries, though no one remembered why. He learned that early exploration teams had reported strange readings from the system, readings that made no sense, readings that suggested technology far beyond anything the young human civilization should possess. Those reports had been buried, ignored, forgotten. Just like the truth about humanity had been buried, ignored, and forgotten. When the Axiom of Ages finally entered the Sol system, stood at the observation window once again. He saw the yellow star burning bright and warm. He saw the planets orbiting in their ancient paths. And he saw Earth, a blue and green jewel hanging in the darkness. It looked so ordinary, so unremarkable, just another world filled with just another species. But knew better now. He could feel it in his ancient bones. He could sense it in the strange energy readings his instruments detected from beneath Earth's surface. Something was hiding here, something old, something powerful, something that had been sleeping for a very, very long time. "Open a channel to Earth," ordered. "Tell them we come in peace. Tell them we wish to learn about their history." As the message was sent, stared at the blue planet below. He had spent 12,000 years searching for the truth about the universe. Now he was afraid of what that truth might be. The Conquered had believed themselves to be the eldest children of the cosmos. They had believed they were the most advanced, the most powerful, the most important beings in existence. They were wrong, and suspected that by the time everyone else realized how wrong they were, it would be far too late. Ambassador had dealt with dozens of species throughout her long career. She had negotiated with warriors and scholars and merchants and priests. She had read the emotions of beings so alien that most diplomats could not even understand their body language. Her empathic abilities made her the finest diplomatic specialist in the entire Conquered. But humanity confused her. She sat in a small cafe in a human city called Geneva. Across from her sat a human male named Director, who was apparently in charge of Earth's relations with alien species. He was drinking something called coffee and smiling politely as they talked. "We are very honored by the Conquered's visit," Director said, "though I admit we are curious about what brought such an important archivist to our little corner of the galaxy." I studied him with her empathic senses. She felt nothing unusual, just the normal emotions of a young species meeting their elders: curiosity, excitement, a little nervousness, nothing that suggested the humans were hiding anything. But it could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. "High Archivist is interested in human history," she said carefully, "particularly your ancient history, the time before your species achieved space travel." Director laughed. "I am afraid that history is rather boring. We spent most of it fighting each other over land and resources, not our proudest moments. And before that, before your recorded history, just fossils and evolution, the usual story. Single cells became complex cells became fish, fish became mammals, mammals became us, nothing special." I nodded and sipped her own drink. It was tea, which she found pleasant. The humans had been wonderful hosts. They had shown the Conquered delegation their cities and their art museums and their universities. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed exactly as the Concord's records described, a young species taking its first steps into the galaxy. So why did it feel like she was missing something important? After the meeting, she walked through the streets of Geneva alone. She had received permission to explore human society freely, and she wanted to observe them in their natural environment. What she saw amazed her. Humans lived such short lives, barely a century if they were lucky, yet they packed so much into those brief years. They fell in love and had children and built careers and created art. They laughed and cried and fought and forgave. They lived with an intensity that who had existed for 3,000 years had never experienced. She stopped at a park where human children were playing. One of them, a girl of perhaps 7 years, was sitting apart from the others. She had a notebook and was writing something with great concentration. I approached carefully. "Hello, little one, what are you working on?" The girl looked up. She showed no fear of the alien being standing before her. Children rarely did. "I am solving a math problem. My teacher said it was impossible, but I think she is wrong." I looked at the notebook. Her blood ran cold. The child had written out the theorem, a mathematical problem that had stumped conquered scientists for 10,000 years. Some of the greatest minds in the galaxy had spent their entire lives trying to solve it. And this human child, this 7-year-old girl, had written out a solution in simple pencil on cheap paper. "Where did you learn this?" I whispered. The girl shrugged. "I did not learn it anywhere, I just figured it out. It is basic stuff, really. Can I go play now?" She ran off to join her friends, leaving us standing frozen in the park. The ambassador stared at the notebook in her hands. The solution was correct. She could see that immediately. A problem that had defeated the greatest mathematical minds in the Concord had been solved by a human child who called it basic stuff. That night, I attended a concert. Human musicians played instruments and sang songs that had no practical purpose. It was just sound organized in pleasing patterns, art for the sake of art. But as the music played, I felt tears streaming down her face. Beside her, a warrior who had fought in 100 battles was weeping openly. The music reached into their souls and touched something deep and ancient, something they had not felt in centuries. "What is happening to me?" the warrior gasped. "I have not cried since I was a child." I had no answer. She only knew that human music had done something that no conquered therapy or technology had ever achieved. It had made ancient beings feel young again. Later, she visited a museum of human art. She saw paintings that depicted impossible things: stars being born, galaxies colliding, beings of light walking through cosmic fire. The humans called it science fiction. They said it was just imagination. But I recognized some of the images. She had seen similar things in the oldest records, images that had been passed down for 60,000 years, images that were supposed to be mythological. The humans were painting them as if from memory. That night I could not sleep. She wandered the halls of the human facility where the conquered delegation was staying. She found a room where a human woman was sleeping peacefully. I knew she should not do it. Scanning someone's mind without permission was a serious breach of protocol, but she had to know. She had to understand. She reached out with her empathic abilities and touched the sleeping woman's dreams. What she found nearly destroyed her mind. The woman was dreaming of stars, not the stars visible from Earth, stars that had died billions of years ago, stars that had been born in the first age of the universe. The woman walked among them like an old friend visiting a familiar garden. In her dream, she was not young. She was ancient beyond measure. She wore robes of woven starlight and her eyes held the weight of countless ages. She was tending to infant galaxies, nurturing them, helping them grow. She was lonely, so terribly, terribly lonely, the only thinking being in a universe that had not yet learned to think. I pulled back from the dream, gasping for air. The woman continued to sleep, undisturbed, unaware of what her dreams contained. A contacted High Archivist immediately. "I have discovered something," she said, her voice shaking. "The humans, they have forgotten. Somehow, impossibly, they have forgotten what they are." "What do you mean?" asked. "They are not a young species, High Archivist. They are the oldest species in the galaxy, perhaps the oldest species in the universe, but they do not remember. Their conscious minds have no idea. Only their dreams know the truth." There was a long silence on the communication channel. "Are you certain?" finally asked. A thought of the child solving impossible theorems. She thought of the music that made ancient beings weep. She thought of the art that depicted cosmic events that happened before any known species existed. "I am certain," she said. "Humanity is the progenitor race. They seeded life across the galaxy, and then, for reasons I cannot understand, they chose to forget everything. They made themselves mortal. They made themselves young. They buried their own history." "But why?" demanded. "Why would any species choose to forget such power?" I remembered the loneliness she had felt in the woman's dream, the crushing weight of being alone for billions of years. "I think," she said slowly, "because remembering was too painful, because being gods was destroying them. So they chose to be mortal. They chose to be small. They chose to start over." She looked out the window at the sleeping human city below. "And they have no idea that they are the most powerful beings who have ever existed." The message from Ambassador had spread through the conquered like wildfire. Within days, the ruling council was in chaos. Some members refused to believe it. Others demanded immediate action. Fleet Commander, a massive predator from a world of endless jungles, was the loudest voice of all. "We must strike now," growled to the assembled council, "while they are still asleep, while they still do not remember what they are." "You speak of attacking a peaceful species," another council member protested. "They have done nothing to threaten us." "They have done nothing yet. But what happens when they wake up? What happens when they remember that they are gods and we are merely the children they created? Do you think they will let us rule ourselves? Do you think they will treat us as equals?" The council argued for hours. In the end, they reached a compromise. Fleet Commander would take a battle fleet to the Sol system. He would not attack unless provoked, but he would be ready if the humans proved to be a threat. On Earth, Ambassador had made a new friend. Her name was Doctor, and she was an archaeologist who specialized in impossible things. Her office was filled with artifacts that should not exist, tools made of metals that were not found on Earth, crystals that contained energy patterns that human science could not explain, fragments of technology that seemed to predate the solar system itself. "Everyone thinks I am crazy," said, showing her collection. "They say these artifacts are hoaxes, fakes, but I have tested them myself. They are real. They are millions of years old. Some of them are billions of years old, and they were made by human hands." I studied the artifacts with wonder. "You believe that humanity existed before your recorded history?" Laughed bitterly. "I do not just believe it, I know it, but no one listens to me. The scientific establishment has decided that humans evolved naturally over the past few million years. Anything that contradicts that story gets ignored or explained away." "What if I told you that you are right? What if I told you that humanity is far older than anyone realizes?" Stared at her. "I would say that you know something I do not." I told her everything. The ancient, the inscriptions that bore Earth's name, the dreams that contained memories of cosmic ages, listened with growing wonder and growing fear. "There is more," I said. "I believe there may be something hidden here on Earth, an archive or a library, something that contains the true history of humanity, something that has been waiting to be found." Was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up and grabbed her coat. "I know where it is," she said. They traveled to the Himalayas, to a region so remote that few humans had ever set foot there. led her through mountain passes and frozen valleys until they reached a cliff face that looked like ordinary rock. "I found this place 5 years ago," said. "There is a door hidden in the stone. I could never figure out how to open it. I could never get anyone to believe me when I told them about it." She pressed her hand against the rock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the stone began to glow. Ancient symbols appeared on the surface, the same symbols I had seen on the billions of miles away. The door opened. Inside was a chamber that had been sealed for billions of years. Dust hung in the air like frozen time. The walls were lined with strange machines that hummed with quiet power, and at the center of the chamber stood a pedestal with a single glowing crystal. As Anna approached, the crystal activated. Light poured out of it and formed into a holographic image. A human figure appeared before them, but this human was different from any had ever seen. She was tall and graceful, with eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. "Welcome, children," the figure said. "I have waited a very long time for you." The hologram explained everything. Humanity was born in the first age of the universe, when the cosmos was young and empty. They were the first thinking beings to emerge from the void. For billions of years, they were alone. They built empires that spanned galaxies. They created technology that could reshape reality. They seeded life on countless worlds, hopping to create companions who would share the universe with them. But being alone for so long had damaged them. Wars broke out among themselves. Depression spread like a plague. Some humans chose to end their existence entirely. Others retreated into virtual realities and never emerged. The species that had conquered the universe was being destroyed by its own loneliness and despair. So they made a choice, a terrible, beautiful choice. They would forget. They would engineer their own minds to lose the memories of their cosmic past. They would compress there until they were mortal again. They would bury their technology and start over as simple creatures on a single small world. They had done this not once but many times. The cycle of rising and forgetting had repeated again and again across billions of years. Sometimes humanity reached the stars and remembered. Sometimes they destroyed themselves before they could. But always, eventually, they chose to forget again. "This iteration," the hologram said, "is the 147th cycle. You have been mortal for approximately 50,000 years this time. Your technology is buried beneath your oceans, inside your moon, within the core of your sun. It waits for you to reclaim it." Was crying, "Why are you telling us this?" "Because the time for forgetting is ending. Others have come to your world. Some mean you harm. The choice must be made again. Do you wish to remember what you truly are? Or do you wish to remain as you are now?" Before could answer, her communication device buzzed. I answered it and her face went pale. "Fleet Commander has arrived," she said. "He has brought a battle fleet. He is demanding that humanity surrender immediately or face destruction." Above them, through a crack in the chamber's ceiling, they could see the night sky. Ships were appearing in orbit, hundreds of them, the most powerful battle fleet the Conquered had ever assembled. Looked at the hologram, she looked at a. She thought about her species, living their short lives in ignorance of what they truly were. She thought about the power buried beneath her feet, power that could save them, power that could destroy them. "What happens if I choose to remember?" she asked. "Then you will become what you once were, a being of cosmic power, a gardener of galaxies, an ancient who has seen the birth and death of stars, but you will also remember the loneliness, the despair, the weight of eternity pressing down on your soul." Closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her eyelids she could almost see it, the memories waiting just beneath the surface of her mind, the truth of what she was. Outside, the conquered fleet began charging its weapons. "If I do not remember," said, "everyone I love will die." "Yes." "Then I have no choice at all." She reached out and touched the crystal. The universe exploded inside her mind. Fleet Commander watched the blue planet below with hungry eyes. His species had evolved as predators. They understood only one law: the strong devoured the weak. And right now, humanity looked very, very weak. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer announced. "Weapons charged, shields at maximum. The humans have deployed their defense fleet." Laughed. The human fleet was tiny. A few hundred ships armed with primitive weapons. They would last perhaps 10 minutes against the might of the conquered armada. "Open a channel to Earth," commanded. "Let me speak to their leaders one final time." The communication screen flickered to life. A human male appeared, wearing a military uniform. His face was pale but determined. "This is Admiral Park of the Earth Defense Force. We have received your demands. We will not surrender. We are a free species and we will die free if we must." Smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Brave words from a species that has existed for only a few thousand years. You do not understand what you are facing. The conquered has ruled this galaxy for 60,000 years. We have crushed rebellions and conquered empires. You are nothing but insects to us. "Then come and swat us," Admiral Park said, "if you can." The channel closed, turned to his officers. "Destroy their fleet. Then begin orbital bombardment of their major cities. I want this over quickly." The first salvos lit up the darkness of space. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the human fleet. The human ships tried to fight back, but they were hopelessly outmatched. One by one, they exploded into clouds of debris and flame. On Earth, billions of people watched the sky. They saw their protectors dying. They saw the alien fleet moving into position above their world. Parents held their children. Lovers held each other. Prayers were whispered in 1,000 languages. They were going to die, everyone knew it. There was no hope. And then something changed. Deep beneath the Himalayas was screaming. The crystal had activated something inside her mind. Memories were flooding into her consciousness. Not just her memories. The memories of every iteration of humanity that had ever existed. Billions of years of history. Trillions of lives lived and lost. The weight of eternity crushing her soul. She saw herself as a child, playing in gardens that orbited black holes. She saw herself as a young woman, falling in love with a man who had been dead for 1,000,000 years. She saw herself as an old woman, watching galaxies die and feeling nothing because she had seen it all before. She saw the loneliness, the terrible, crushing loneliness of being the only thinking beings in an empty universe. She felt the despair that had driven her species to forget. She understood why they had chosen mortality over godhood. But she also saw the love, the hope, the determination to create life and nurture it and watch it grow. She saw humanity planting seeds across the galaxy, seeds that would become the species that now threatened to destroy them. The water beings, the predators like, all of them had been created by human hands. All of them were humanity's children. And now those children were trying to kill their parents. Scream changed. It became something else. A sound that was not a sound. A voice that spoke directly into the minds of every being in the solar system. Enough. On the conquered flagship, every officer froze. The word had bypassed their ears entirely. It had appeared in their minds like a brand burned into their thoughts. Grabbed his head in pain. What is happening? What was that? His tactical officer was staring at his displays with wide eyes. "Commander, something is happening on Earth." The planet below was changing. Lights were appearing across its surface, not the lights of cities, something older, something that had been buried and hidden and sleeping for millions of years. Structures rose from the oceans, massive towers of crystal and metal that had rested on the sea floor since before the dinosaurs. Defense platforms emerged from beneath mountains. Weapons systems that had been dormant since the last ice age powered up with a hum that could be felt across the entire system. The moon cracked open. not breaking apart but opening, like an egg revealing what was hidden inside. A structure of impossible size unfolded from within the lunar surface, a weapon or a tool or something that the conquered had no words for. And the sun flickered. "Commander," the tactical officer whispered, "the sun. They have done something to the sun. It is not a natural star. It is a power source, a machine, and it is waking up." Felt fear for the first time in his long life. Real fear. The kind of fear that a predator feels when it realizes it has attacked something far more dangerous than itself. "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Get us out of here now." But it was too late. The voice spoke again. This time it was gentler, sadder, but no less powerful. "We built you. We seeded your worlds. We watched you grow and we were proud. We gave you everything, the stars, the planets, the gift of thought. And when we grew tired, we trusted you to inherit what we had made." On every ship in the conquered fleet, on every world in the galaxy, beings stopped what they were doing and listened. They had no choice. The voice was everywhere. "Now you come to our home. You attack us while we sleep. You try to destroy the parents who gave you life." Stood at the center of the ancient chamber. Her body had changed. Light poured from her eyes. Her skin glowed with the energy of 1,000 suns. She was no longer just archaeologist. She was 147th iteration of humanity, heir to a legacy that spanned the entire history of the universe. And she was angry. "We are disappointed," she said, "but we are not cruel. You have one chance. Stand down. Leave our system, and we will forgive this attack as the mistake of frightened children." Fleet Commander stared at the transformed planet below. His predator instincts were screaming at him to run, but his pride would not let him. "Fire everything," he commanded. "Destroy that planet." Every weapon in the conquered fleet fired at once. Enough firepower to crack a world in half. Enough destruction to end a civilization. The energy beams and missiles reached Earth's atmosphere and simply stopped. They hung in space like frozen lightning. Then they faded away, not destroyed, not deflected, just unmade, erased from existence as if they had never been fired at all. His voice filled mind one final time. "We gave you a chance." The conquered fleet ceased to exist, not in fire and explosions. There was no violence at all. One moment the ships were there. The next moment they were gone. Every admiral, every officer, every soldier, simply removed from the universe as easily as erasing a drawing from a page. The galaxy fell silent. Trillions of beings had witnessed what happened. They had felt the voice in their minds. They had seen the most powerful fleet in existence wiped away like dust. And they understood, finally, the truth that they had been too arrogant to see. They were not the eldest children of the cosmos. They were not the most powerful beings in existence. They were just children, children who had forgotten their parents, children who had tried to kill the very beings who had created them. And those parents had woken up. 1 year had passed since the awakening. The galaxy had changed more in those 12 months than in the previous 60,000 years, but not in the way anyone had expected. Humanity had not conquered. They had not demanded tribute or submission. They had not punished the conquered for the attack. Instead, they had done something far more unsettling. They had gone back to gardening. Across the galaxy, strange ships appeared near dying stars. Human vessels, crewed by those who had chosen to remember, working to repair damage that the younger species had never even noticed. They stabilized stars that were about to explode. They healed ecosystems that had been slowly collapsing for. They fixed cosmic wounds left by ancient wars that no one remembered. They asked for nothing in return. They simply worked, quietly and patiently, like gardeners tending to a vast and precious garden. High archivists spent the year studying the ancient. Now that humanity had revealed themselves, the structures opened their secrets freely. What learned humbled him more than anything in his 12,000 years of life. Every species in the conquered had been created by humanity, not through genetic engineering or forced evolution, through love. Humanity had seeded worlds with the building blocks of life and then watched, for millions of years, as those seeds grew into thinking beings. That had been humanity's first success, a crystalline species born from silicon and light. Humanity had wept with joy when the first opened its eyes and asked a question. The water beings had come later, then the predators, then dozens of others, each one a miracle, each one a child that humanity had hoped would grow up to be a companion. But children grow up, and children forget their parents, and eventually the children had spread across the galaxy and built their own civilizations and forgot that they had ever been created at all. Presented his findings to the reformed conquered council. His conclusion was simple and devastating. We have spent 60,000 years believing we were the masters of the galaxy. We were wrong. We are the students, and our teachers have been sleeping in the next room the entire time. The council had no response. What could they say? They had tried to destroy their creators. They had failed completely, and instead of punishment, they had received only quiet disappointment and continued love. It was almost worse than being conquered. Ambassador returned to Earth regularly. She had become something of a liaison between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. But mostly, she came to visit her friend. Doctor had changed since the awakening. She had accessed the ancient memories. She had felt the weight of cosmic ages pressing down on her soul. She had wielded power that could unmake fleets and heal stars. And then she had given it all up. I found her in her old office at the university, was sorting through artifacts again. Her eyes were no longer filled with starlight. She looked tired and happy and completely, wonderfully ordinary. I do not understand, I said. You could be a god, you could rule the galaxy, you could live forever. Why did you choose to return to this? Smiled and poured tea for both of them. It was the same tea she had served a year ago, before everything changed. Because I did live forever, she said. Or at least my ancestors did, for billions of years. And do you know what eternal life taught them? What? That mortality is a gift, not a curse. Walked to the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She watched it with an expression of pure wonder. The first time I saw a sunset billions of years ago, I cried at its beauty. It was the most amazing thing I had ever experienced. But after seeing 10 billion sunsets, it became routine. I stopped noticing. I stopped caring. I had seen everything so many times that nothing was special anymore. She turned back to that is why my people chose to forget. Not because we were weak, because we were wise. We understood that wonder is the most precious thing in existence, and wonder requires the possibility of loss. If you live forever, if you can never lose anything, then nothing has value. But you could have saved everyone who died in the attack. You could have prevented the suffering. Could I? Perhaps, but suffering is also part of life. Pain teaches us to appreciate joy. Loss teaches us to treasure what we have. My ancestors tried to create a perfect universe where nothing bad ever happened. It nearly destroyed them. Picked up an artifact from her desk. It was a simple crystal, billions of years old, humming with quiet power. I transmitted the knowledge needed to stop the attack. I awakened enough of the old technology to protect Earth. But then I chose to forget again, because I want to experience wonder again. I want to see a sunset and cry at its beauty, not because I remember crying before, but because it truly moves me. She set the crystal down. Most humans made the same choice. We remembered long enough to protect ourselves. Then we let the memories fade. We chose to be mortal again. We chose to be small. I shook her head slowly. The galaxy fears you. They think you might awaken again and conquer them. Let them fear. Fear can be healthy. It might stop them from making the same mistakes. And what about those who chose to stay awakened? Those who are out there now, fixing stars and healing worlds. Smile became sad. They are the gardeners. Someone has to tend the garden, but they are the minority now. Most of us just want to live our short, bright lives. We want to fall in love and have children and grow old and die. We want to experience the universe as if we are seeing it for the first time. She looked at the sunset again. Tears were forming in her eyes, not tears of sadness, tears of joy. "Do you see that?" she whispered. "The way the light catches the clouds, the way the colors blend together. I saw 1 billion sunsets as an immortal, and none of them moved me like this one does. Because this time I know it will not last. This time I know each sunset is precious because my time is limited." A watched her friend and finally understood. Humanity was not powerful because of their technology or their cosmic knowledge. They were powerful because they understood something that no other species had figured out. That the purpose of existence was not to last forever. It was to burn brightly. Years later, when I was old and preparing for her own end, she thought back to that conversation. She thought about humanity, the oldest species in the universe, who had chosen mortality over godhood, who had traded eternal life for the ability to feel wonder. She realized that they had given the galaxy the greatest gift of all, not technology or protection or wisdom. They had shown everyone that it was okay to be small, that it was okay to live short lives and make mistakes and die without achieving perfection. Because in the end, the universe was not meant to be conquered. It was meant to be loved. And love, true love, required an ending. Far away, on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, an old woman named sat on her porch and watched her playing in the garden. She did not remember being a god. She did not remember wielding the power of stars. She only knew that she was happy. That night, she dreamed of vast gardens spanning galaxies. She dreamed of planting seeds that would become worlds. She dreamed of loneliness that lasted for ages and love that conquered it. When she woke, she did not remember the dreams, but she felt a strange peace, a sense that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She walked outside and watched the sunrise. And she wept at its beauty.